Hello and welcome to Smaulgld's Russian Central Bank Gold Reserve Update for the month of August. Central Bank of Russia continues its gold buying binge in August. Let's take a look at what they did. Russia added 500,000 ounces of gold to reserves in August. And since June 2015, the Central Bank of Russia has added about 465 tons of gold to her reserves. That 500,000 ounces or 15.5 ton addition in August brings the Russian Central Bank holdings to 1,745 tons, which is the sixth most of any nation. We're going to take a look at some charts on Russia's gold buying activity in a second. Overall Russian reserves rose from 418 billion in July to 423 or nearly 424 billion in August. Gold reserves now constitute 17.3% of overall Russian reserves. And there's your pitch to donate to Smaulgld via PayPal, via Litecoin, via Bitcoin, or via becoming a Smaulgld patron. If you enjoy these types of reports, please consider a small or large donation. Now let's take a look. Now Russia is by far the central bank that is buying the most gold, adding the most gold to her reserves of any central bank in the world, including China. They added 208 tons of gold to their reserves in 2015, and last year 199 tons. They ended 2016 with 1,614 tons of gold on their balance sheet. So far this year, Central Bank of Russia has added 4.2 million ounces or another 131 tons through August. It looks like they're on pace, clockwork, to add another at least 200 tons of gold to reserves this year. Here's a look. Since June of 2015, the Central Bank of Russia has added about 465 tons of gold. By the way, if you want to buy gold yourself, you can do so through the links on the Smaulgld site. Not investment advice, but if you've done your research, that's what you want to do. You can buy at BJSC, Golden Eagle Coins, ST Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, compare pricing and shipping. And if you do purchase, Smaulgld makes a small commission, so that is another way of helping out the website. Now, since 2009, Russia has added over 1,100 tons of gold to reserves, which is more than China, who's added just about 775 tons. During that period, we've also noted that China, or at least the People's Republic of China, has not added gold to her balance sheet since they were admitted officially into the SDR basket in October of 2016. They remain at 1,842 plus tons of gold. Here, as you can see, and I've been tracking this monthly for a few years, the Russian Central Bank gold purchases since June, even during the bad period of June 2014 when they had sanctions. They had a couple of months where they didn't add gold reserves, but they made up for it in subsequent months. And you could see that Russia pretty much adds almost each and every month. They don't have the record. See, they have a couple of periods here where they didn't add gold. Kazakhstan has added gold now for 58 straight months. But Russia has obviously added a significant amount more. And just last month, August, added 500,000 or 500,000 ounces of gold. And since this period of time that I've been tracking it, Russia has added 21.4 million ounces or 666 tons of gold just from June 2014 to August 2017. Look to the right there, that's gold falling down after Janet Yellen's announcement that the Fed is going to begin to unwind its balance sheet. More on that later. There's Ethereum, looks like it is untouched by the Fed action on its way up. Now, as I mentioned, Russia adding gold to reserves at a faster pace than China. When we use the term Russia and China, we mean Central Bank of Russia, People's Bank of China. China obviously has more gold in the country than Russia has. It's in different places. I've wrote an article on this. It was published in Zero Heads. It is about where China keeps its gold. It's not just at the People's Bank of China. It's at other Chinese-held banks, many of which are subsidiaries or partially owned or wholly owned by the People's Bank of China. It's at sovereign wealth funds. It's in private citizens' hands, and so on. When people say China has this amount of gold, or Russia has this amount, or India has this amount, they're only talking about the central bank. India, which supposedly has, or is estimated to have 18,000 to 22,000 tons of gold. Most of that is in the private citizens' hands and some temples. The central bank or the Royal Bank of India only has 558 tons. So when we say China's gold, we mean People's Bank of China. When we say Russia's gold, we mean the Central Bank of the Federation of Russia. Now you can see that the Central Bank of Russia has added more gold than China through October 2016, and I've stopped keeping this chart because China, or the People's Bank of China, has not added any gold since October 2016. That's not to say they're not importing massive amounts, that there's not robust trade on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, or that they're not continuing to mine gold. It's just not ending up on the People's Bank of China's balance sheet. But they are reporting the reserves. So we probably will get a catch-up on that gold reserve number. Maybe October 2017, maybe in a couple of months, we'll see a higher number. They may decide to move some of the gold into the People's Bank of China. Who knows? But we can only report what they tell us. Russia's been a lot more transparent with their gold holdings and their overall reserves. In fact, before we look at this gold mining chart, you can see here they list every month their foreign reserves, their currency reserves, and they're up. The overall reserves are up 14.1%, so they're heading towards a $500 billion in reserves. We'll talk about that in a sec. But here's where Russia gets its gold. They're not going out on the market and buying it. Russia is now the second largest gold producing nation in the world, behind guess who? China. Australia is third. Both countries basically keep their entire supply, except Russia, you can see, does have some excess. They do mine a bit more than they add to reserves, and guess where the rest of that gold goes? Goes to China. So they sell some additional gold, make some rubles for that, or some yuan, or convert it into dollars. I don't know how they do it, but they have been buying up an increasing amount of their mining production, you could see, since 2014, and then the rest of it goes to China. So basically they're turning the rubles into gold. Here are the top 10. You can see where Russia and China, they're the only two countries that are adding right here in the middle. They've moved themselves into the top 10 over the last 3 years. India, Netherlands, Japan, Switzerland, all these countries haven't added gold over the last 10, 15, 20 years. Switzerland actually sold 60% of its gold. They used to be up in the 2,600 range, 2,800 range. About 20 years ago, they sold 60% of their gold. You see England is not on this chart. Bank of England sold a lot of their gold. They're down in the top 20 with about 300 some odd tons. France, Italy, these numbers haven't changed for decades. Germany's has changed. It's actually gone down since 2003 as they sell about 4 tons a year to the government to make gold coins. So, and then the United States hasn't added gold officially, 8,133.5 tons, and that gold hasn't seen the light of day or hasn't been audited since the 50s, although Secretary Treasury Binge and his wife visited Fort Knox along with, I think it was Senate Majority Leader McConnell. They took a look around. I'm sure they didn't count any bars, but they saw the gold for the first time since any public official has been to Fort Knox since the 1970s. And not all the U.S. gold of the 8,133 tons is held at Fort Knox. There's other locations in the country, Denver, West Point, a couple others. But again, not audited since the well, it has been audited, but there hasn't been a published audit that shows bar by bar. There hasn't been a full audit since, I think, the 1950s. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Russia. So their overall reserves are growing. They've grown 52 billion since the time I started tracking in January of 2016. Their gold now, those 1,700 plus tons, are now worth about 70, were at the end of August worth 73.49 billion, and that represents 17.3% of Russia's overall reserves, which stand at 423 billion. Part of the rebuilding of the growing of Russia's treasury, the central bank of Russia's reserve position, is adding U.S. treasuries. You can see during the sanction period, they sold off a lot of their treasuries. They were down in the 60s, 60 billion. They basically slashed their treasuries in half, and now they're back over 100 for the last 4 months. They've increased their treasuries basically ever since Donald Trump was reelected. Possibly a correlation and a causation. So they're up from 66 billion in April 2015 to 103.1 billion. That about does it. Thank you very much for listening, and we will be out tomorrow. We still have to give you the Indian silver update on imports. We've got a few other reports that are past due. The Shanghai Gold Exchange for August as well, and a few other special reports. Canadian Mint, we're still behind on that. We have to give you the update on the gold and silver sales for the first half of the year, which they published a couple of weeks ago. Thank you very much.